Hi everyone, the topic of this video might seem very specific, and it might not be something that has been discussed all that much before, but it's an issue that has been really bothering me lately and I feel like it needs to be addressed. I'm talking about the sort of fetishization and idealization that K-pop stans have towards English-speaking idols and idols that were born and raised in the West. Of course every idol can potentially be fetishized and treated weirdly, but there are some idols that experience a different type of fetishization, connected to them being from the West and speaking English. So let's get into the video and see what I mean. One thing I've noticed ever since I first got into K-pop, is that idols that were born in the West, or at least whose first language is English, tend to be perceived as being more morally superior compared to other idols. This stems from the fact that people tend to think of them as more knowledgeable about what's going on in the world, more open-minded, more aware of things that somebody born and raised in Korea, Japan, China or Thailand might not be aware of. This way of thinking has most likely something to do with the fact that many Asian countries tend to be more close-minded compared to most Western countries. This is not entirely wrong, and if we take Korea as an example, it's easy to see how much more racist, homophobic and misogynistic it is compared to the West. This might be the main reason as to why when it comes to idols whose first language is English and that were either born or have lived abroad, K-pop stans tend to almost idealize them, thinking they are for sure gonna be more aware of the world's social problems, more open-minded. But there is a fundamental problem with this generalization. First of all, as much as some Asian countries can be more close-minded and the news could also be filtered to fit with certain political views, the internet is free and accessible to everyone, and I refuse to believe idols don't have social media, which means that idols that were born and raised in Asia can still be informed and have an open mind. On the other hand, that's not to say that whoever was born and raised in the West is the embodiment of liberalism, since you don't know in what kind of environment these people were raised in, you don't know what views their families pushed onto them, you don't know what kind of friends they surrounded themselves with, and being from the West doesn't automatically exclude the possibility of someone being homophobic, racist, misogynistic, etc. But of course, since K-pop stans live in a fantasy world where everything follows specific rules, whenever a new English-speaking idol comes around, people immediately treat them as some kind of new messiah, somebody who will for sure know better, someone who could really make a change and change K-pop for the better. This instantly makes me think of LE SSERAFIM's Yunjin. If you think about it, in the beginning people idolized her like crazy, all because of a sentence, "I want to change the idol industry," she said, something that many people took too seriously. I believe they put so many expectations on Yunjin, genuinely believing she could be someone that was seriously gonna change the world, but then they didn't hesitate to drag her to hell and back the moment they realized she couldn't have possibly changed anything. Yunjin said she was gonna change the industry, but then proceeded to play into the industry she said she was gonna change, without doing anything that could actually make a difference, because the truth is, one individual alone can't really change anything, and Yunjin is only human. I genuinely believe that if she made that comment about changing the industry while being your average Korean, Chinese, Japanese or Thai idol, nobody would have taken her so seriously. Nobody would have placed so many expectations upon her. Western K-pop stans felt represented by her, seeing her as almost better than other Asian idols, someone more knowledgeable, more fearless, more clever and more ready to make a difference, just because she came from the West, and that was the beginning of her downfall. In fact, the hate she got for simply holding a Starbucks drink isn't like anything else I've ever seen. In comparison, no K-pop idol from Asia has gotten as much hatred for associating with the brand involved in the boycott. I've already expressed my opinion and said how this witch hunt is fucking stupid, and how idols being crucified for this kind of things doesn't make any difference at all in the grand scheme of things. This is just an excuse to bully idols you dislike, and many of you had a reason to dislike Yunjin. Not just because of the lacking vocals she showcased at Coachella or during LE SSERAFIM's encore stages, but mostly because she betrayed your expectations. You put too much faith in Yunjin changing the industry, just for her to do nothing to change it, and actually doing something that changed it for the worst, associating herself with a brand that you so wanted to boycott, and this let you down. So ever since then you all have tried to find every excuse to bring her down and blame her, when the only one to blame is you who put crazy expectations on a young girl, turning her into a symbol of something that she could have never been. Another idol I want to talk about is Chanelle, a former member of the survival show Are You Next, and a current member of the new 50/50s lineup. Her situation is actually quite similar to Yunjin. Let's see why. There are many reasons as to why plenty of people have decided to not support 50/50's re-debut. If you don't know, the original members of 50/50 all left the company, besides Keenat, for alleged mistreatment. Many K-pop stans are choosing to not support the new 50/50 in order to boycott the company, and Chanelle was one of the most loved trainees on RU Next, one of the ones everybody was looking forward to see debuting. So seeing her debuting under an allegedly problematic agency is not something that made people happy. First of all, I want to say that even if there are many reasons to believe that Attract, 50/50's agency, is in the wrong for what they did to the group, there are still many questions left unanswered. And according to the agency, it was the former 50/50 members who were poached by another agency and decided to suddenly terminate their contracts. So it's basically a he said she said situation. It's kind of unclear to determine who is wrong and right. But anyway, some people were disappointed because considering Chanelle's fame, she could have re-debuted under any other agency according to them. Instead she chose a problematic one, and I just have to say, you make it sound easy to debut in this oversaturated market. You don't know what Chanelle went through. You don't know if maybe she tried to debut somewhere else and simply wasn't able to. You can't blame her for being desperate to debut. You can't blame a young girl for the mistakes of a company. She has no say in any of this. But of course you put way too many expectations on her like you always do. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that if she was your average Korean idol you wouldn't hate her this much. And the proof is that y'all are not throwing any type of hate towards any of the other new members. And before you say that it's natural people are more disappointed in Chanelle because she was already known, then my question is, what about Keenat? She was an original member who decided to stay with the company instead of following the other former members. Why are y'all not giving her the same treatment as Chanelle then? And yes, I know Keenat also got her fair share of hate, but it's not even comparable to what's currently happening to Chanelle. It's almost as if you thought she would know better because she's American. Just because most people in the West are against the company and support the former 50/50 members, it doesn't mean everyone in the West thinks the same. But then again, Chanelle might have just been eager to re-debut. Let's also not forget that she's Asian, and you know that K-pop has never been the most friendly industry towards Asian idols. So things for her might not have actually been as easy as you claim. Like I said, her situation is similar to Yunjin's. You placed way too high expectations on her, convincing yourself she would know better. But then it turns out she's just a normal girl who is far from perfect and makes mistakes like everyone else, which deeply disappointed you, leading you to hate her much more than you hate the other new 50/50 members, and maybe even more than you hate the company itself. But the problem when it comes to K-pop stans' weird behavior towards Western idols isn't just placing crazy expectations on them and holding them to a higher standard. There is also a problem that comes with deluding themselves into thinking it's possible to establish a deeper and realer connection with them. If you think about it, it might seem obvious as to why someone from the West would feel more connected to an idol that is also from the West. That's because they speak a language you can understand, because you probably share the same set of values and experiences since they come from the same country as you, or at least from a country that is more similar to yours than Korea is. You can feel like you relate to them whenever they talk about some interests that are intrinsically tied to Western culture, such as certain movies and shows, and you feel closer to them when they use specific slang that is commonly used online and is popular everywhere in the West, because it almost makes you feel like they are not someone unreachable that lives on the other side of the world, but rather someone that could very well be your neighbor, your classmate, or one of your colleagues. On one hand, this type of connection can be great and it can better help you understand the idols you stan. It can almost make you feel as if you are their friend, which is beautiful. But some people actually start deluding themselves and thinking they are actually idols' friends, and this unfortunately never leads to anything good. Of course, speaking the same language and maybe coming from the same country is definitely gonna make you feel somewhat closer to an idol, but that's just surface level close, because deep down, you are you and they are them. Maybe you've actually led completely different lives, and just because you've both watched the same shows and you can laugh about the same memes, it doesn't mean you have anything else in common with them. But even if you did, that doesn't make them your friends. The first idol I thought about in relation to this topic is Bang Chan. He was born in South Korea but moved to Australia when he was very young, and he has lived there for a long time. So he not only speaks fluent English but he also relates to a culture that's similar to that of other Western countries. Bang Chan has always been an idol that feels very relatable, that shares a lot with his fans, sometimes maybe too much. For example, he's definitely guilty of saying pretty cringy things, And it's true that he plays into these weird requests from the fans when he could easily take a step back. But you see, as fans, you would never think of asking non-English speaking idols to say these sort of things. You'd most likely never ask a Korean idol to call you baby girl and say he's your daddy. But this is the kind of crap you want Bang Chan to say. And yes, he's a grown man and could honestly avoid granting all of his fans' weird wishes. But y'all are hella gross for asking him to say such things in the first place. It's almost as if you felt justified to do it because he speaks English. Another problem that I've seen is how some people seem to use Bang Chan as some sort of therapist, and they tend to trauma dump in his lives, almost expecting him to help you with all your problems, as if he was your own friend, as if he automatically knew how to help you just because he speaks English and you can communicate with him easily. This is exactly the problem. If these idols' first language is English, you feel like you are more connected to them, but the truth is, you are not. They are still strangers living on the other side of the world and they don't know about your existence, exactly like Asian idols. But if these people speak English, it gives you the illusion that they are not as distant from you, at least emotionally speaking, which is completely false because like I said, they don't know you and they have their own problems to deal with, so they can't play therapists with you, even if you might share some common experiences with them because you were raised in the same country. They are not your fucking friends. Get it through your head. The problem with treating English-speaking idols like Bang Chan as friends, is that then you just take everything they say and run with it. Bang Chan definitely overshares and has a bit of a boundary problem with his fans, but you are the main problem because you just take his words, twist them, and use them as you please to justify your shitty behavior, which is something that I've mostly seen happening with fans of English-speaking idols, since y'all are deluding yourself of having a deeper connection with them. So in conclusion, I feel like Western K-pop stans often fetishize idols from the West even more. Standing an idol that grew up in a different continent and doesn't understand your language definitely creates a bit of a barrier, but this barrier can sometimes be necessary. Otherwise many stans just become delusional. And this is exactly what happens whenever they put too many expectations on an idol just because they are from the West. But you have to remember these idols are just like every other idol at the end of the day. They're not gonna change the industry just because you expect them to be more outspoken and wiser. They're not gonna be morally superior and immune to making mistakes. And they will never become your friends or your therapists you can trauma dump on. I think some people really needed to hear this. Let me know what you think of this topic and comment your opinions down below. Thanks for sticking till the end. Bye guys.